Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very big broadcast lined up for you today. If you go to the top of drudgereport.com, you see that Jade Helm is the top story. Texas bristles at Obama invasion. Fears fester. Rand Paul plays down comments on military exercise. Governor working to calm the public. I just so happened, as fate would have it, to be downtown this morning, and I ran into Daniel Hodge, the chief of staff for Governor Greg Abbott. And I talked to him a few weeks ago, but then I just so happened to run into him and talk to him for a few minutes. We're picturing him there behind the governor from the Texas Tribune photo. And I said, what do you think of this whole Jade Helm thing? He said, well, we just put out the facts. We're going to guard people's basic rights, and we're just moving on. The media wants to make stuff up they can. We're going to worry about the new legislature and trying to get more jobs to Texas and to keep taxes low. And I went on to talk about the hoax they ran, claiming that I wouldn't show up for This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He had a fill-in guest yesterday, as if I wouldn't show up to a live TV program. They said it was live. They backed out of it. They said taped. I said no. Then they sent a car right before, one text. Sent Nico a text 45 minutes before saying, where is he? Just classic. This is the type of dirty tricks these people run. I will go on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, any of these dinosaur media corporate outlets, anytime live. Everybody knows that. And I will clean the floor with you just like I did Piers Morgan. And you know what happened to him. And it became the biggest, as voted by CNN and the LA Times and others, the biggest news event, the biggest particular news on the news, the biggest freak out. You can pull the articles up. In that year, 2013. It was on every major channel for weeks. His ratings bumped for a week and a half from 1.5 million to over 3 million, and then he went into free fall because they can't handle it. There was a whole nother segment coming up, and they kicked me out and had security throw me out because I cleaned the floor with him. But it doesn't matter. They just claim that I'm afraid to debate them. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Now, what's not hilarious is breaking and is coming up at the start of the next segment. ISIS terrorists threaten London attack. And I've explained to folks, I was there days after the 7/7 bombing in 2005. That was a pure patsy event with folks taking part in a drill who they set up and then later executed because some of them figured it out. Now, I made a whole film about it, Terror Storm, detailing it and proving it. ISIS is different. The West funded with billions of dollars the last 5 years and recruited hundreds of thousands of jihad fighters funded by Saudi Arabia and others in Qatar. They allow them to fly all over the world and to recruit and operate. And I've been predicting for 4 years ad nauseum every week, maybe somebody will put the clips together, where I said we're funding them in Benghazi and Libya, we're funding them in Syria. It's going to blow back with attacks on the West, and they're going to use those attacks to take our liberties. I have said it not hundreds, but probably 500 times. Paul Watson joins us from London with these new developments. They've got photos of explosives, where they're going to hit. Their main recruiting base is London. They've been protected by MI6. This could be used to bring in real tyranny. Now, that said, something I was able to pull up this morning that we predicted and laid out, and it's not about saying, oh, look, we were right. It's about letting folks know that we're not making this stuff up. It's not about counting coup or keeping score. Cy Hirsch has come out and says the White House is lying about the killing of bin Laden. And I happen to have all the videos and news articles we did on May 2nd, the day after Obama said this in 2011. And so those clips are coming up. And then I said exactly what really happened and had the Navy SEAL families on. And then we talked to Cy Hirsch, by the way. He called us or emailed us about all this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now a global story from Der Spiegel to the Financial Times of London to the Times of Tokyo. Texas bristles at Obama's invasion. I talked to the governor's chief of staff this morning, Mr. Hodge. I'll be telling you a little bit about that coming up towards the end of the hour. There's also this big controversy that, I mean, from Breitbart to ABC News, saying that I chickened out and would not show up to a debate with This Week, Stephanopoulos' show, which is just ridiculous. I mean, no one that's a listener believes that. It's all part of the deception of these people, a tissue of lies. Speaking of tissue of lies, the big news today is twofold. ISIS is saying imminent terror attack in London. That exclusive breakdown is at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com with Paul Joseph Watson. We're going to be talking to him in just one moment. So there is a lot to go over today. But if you go back to May 2nd, 2011, to Infowars.com, and we're reposting this right now as we speak. Exclusive Bin Laden dead hoax exposed. Alex Jones, May 2nd, 2011, the day after Obama on May Day launched his socialist hoax, and that video has 1,071,819 views. You go to the next day, and there's a breakdown. And then the next week, May 11th, proof, Bin Laden death, another government lie, 911,000 views with Rob Dew and myself. Then Cy Hirsch begins to correspond with this office, with one of our investigative reporters via email, asking us questions about our Navy SEAL contacts. A few weeks later, he writes stories for the New Yorker magazine. Paul Watson wrote about the story, Cy Hirsch, Bin Laden raid, one big lie. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist slams pathetic U.S. media for failing to challenge White House. That's September 27th, 2013, roughly 2 years later. Today, Cy Hirsch comes out, and it's all over the international news. Hirsch, the White House is lying about the killing of Osama bin Laden, who reportedly died in 2011. At the bottom of the hour, I'm going to play some clips from our breakdown of this 4 years ago, the day after it happened, and compare that to now what Cy Hirsch is saying. Talking to Paul Watson over the phone today about writing an article about this, I won't even talk over the telephone about my sources. This is very dangerous. Just want you to know that. This isn't a game. And this is kind of stuff you get killed for. The good news is a lot of these Navy SEAL families are now public, not just telling us privately or telling my family things privately. I have this from multiple sources, myself and through family in the military. I'm just going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. But they killed those SEALs in that helicopter. They got rid of them. That's when the family, a few months later, started going public. I was sought out. Some of the families we had on later. And they concurred. They said, yes, the word is that bin Laden had already died of kidney failure in 2002. And this is what you heard from insiders like Pieczenik and others as well. Steve Pieczenik, Counsel on Foreign Relations. And that there was a bin Laden double in a Pakistani safe house, basically on house arrest, a half-mile from their main national military headquarters. And there was no firefights, no nothing. The SEALs were sent in, and they killed the double. They began to question it with this body on board the helicopter. One helicopter was blown up trying to get rid of the SEALs to confuse things. And then they had to get rid of the rest of the team that was sent in a few months later with a helicopter that was set up to go into the ambush and to be blown up as well. And I was told directly by Navy SEALs, I'm just going to stop right there, that they knew there was a bomb on board. And their superiors were telling them, oh, Al-Qaeda must have gotten a bomb on board at your base. So I broke all this down. In fact, when I learned this, I shot a video in my car leaving the meeting. I was so concerned. And that video is up on Infowars.com. And you notice now, I told you the Situation Room video was fake. I told you they didn't have live feeds. I told you that it was all scripted. I told you that there was no burial at sea. And then they court-martialed over 100 people on the boat who've gone public and said there was no burial. It was all fake. Stratford emails got hacked. Stratford for the CIA was on the job trying to discredit me. They did that with a Cass Sunstein cognitive infiltration move, having their operatives claim that I work for them to cover the fact they were trying to bring me down. I mean, I live a cloak and dagger life, and I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not looking for revolution. I just want my republic back. I want my Bill of Rights back. I want due process back. I don't want special interest hijacking the country, signing us on to tens of trillions of dollars that aren't our debt, and sinking the republic. And there's all these enemy programs trying to misrepresent who we are and what we say because the government listens to us. Good people in the military, in the Congress, in the state houses, listen. You got everybody from Rand Paul to Ted Cruz to Chuck Norris to Governor Abbott coming out and agreeing with me and saying, yes, there's a takeover of our military. They're being developed for a mission against the Patriots. Louis Gohmert said it, the congressman, Chuck Norris, you name it. That's why we have a concern, because they admit the main mission training is shifting to domestic. And on the Jade Helm website, they admit that it's about conquering the human domain, sociology, anthropology, to understand their future adversary. That's what they're training for, America. Of course it has dual use. But that's what's happening, and we're forcing a debate about it. So I'll break all this down coming up. And I've said this many times, I'm in over my head. And we're all in over our heads. I mean, there's no way to track all of this. Now, I do want to get the article up on Infowars.com as a featured story. I came in before the show, and it was about 45 minutes ago. I gave the directive to flash back our articles and our videos from day one, from day two to be technical. I need to get those up on Infowars.com, and then I need to get it tweeted out to everybody on the Cy Hirsch front. But you notice over and over again, this continues to unfold and happen. And it is live now. Flashback, Seymour Hersh, the bin Laden raid, one big lie. And if you scroll down more into the article, if you scroll down more into the article, you can see the videos that we shot on May 2nd, 2011, breaking it all down. And we specifically need to put those out as their own story. I mean, we just continue to call everything, and we're digging through all the videos. We're going to add the Navy SEAL family interviews, the names of who they say the body double was. We have it all. We know what happened from the Navy SEALs. They weren't able to kill. We're going to skip this network break because this information is so important. We take you now live to London, England with our UK correspondent and editor-at-large of Infowars.com, Paul Joseph Watson. Paul, I tell you, we keep talking about things accelerating, intensifying with the expanded EU treaties, the TPP treaty. We've got major news on that. So much is happening. But first off, ISIS is a real Western-funded terror brigade. We know a SWAT MI6 protected the head of the London bombing attack. It's following the same MO. They're showing photos and more of bombs, saying they're preparing to attack England, imminent attacks. Again, this is synthetic terror, but nevertheless real. from my view. We just saw what happened up in Dallas, in the suburb, Garland. Paul Joseph Watson from London, on the ground, joining us via audio Skype from the ground. What do you have to report for us?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, basically Twitter has exploded over the last couple of hours, with 3 individuals in particular threatening directly an attack on London, naming the actual targets, posting pictures of suicide belts, BB bombs, nail bombs, and saying that they're going to hit London with this hashtag London attack. That's important. People may say, oh, well, this is just some idiots on Twitter. 15 minutes before the Garland attack last week, Texas attack, that hashtag was tweeted out by an individual linked to the attack. And Twitter only suspended that account the day after. These 3 individuals that are tweeting out these threats, since our story went up, only one of them has been suspended. Another one has blocked me. So I don't know whether his account's been suspended or not. It appears to still be up. And then there's another one who is still active. And as Twitter suspends these accounts, new ones just keep popping up in their place. So they're brazenly out there on Twitter, these jihadists linked to ISIS, saying they're going to use suicide belts, nail bombs to attack specific locations in London. They name Paddington Underground Station. They name Covent Garden, which is a popular tourist area in central London, and say that they're going to carry out these attacks. And these accounts, most of them are still active.
And they show what look like professional plastic explosive bombs jacketed with ball bearings and nails. And remember, Paul, I was there to make the film Terror Storm 3 days after the London bombing. We have all the eyewitnesses. That was a setup where they had people set up in a drill. That in the old days, they would run drills and set up patsies, and the governments would stage them. Now they have their own jihadi armies. They've allowed Saudi Arabia to fund, who they allow to travel in and out of the U.S., England, and the rest of the EU. This is a real synthetic army, and I think these threats should be taken very, very seriously.
Well, here's the thing, Alex. When we struck Libya in 2011 with the United States, after that, they brought across a load of these jihadists from Libya, the same kind who are now leading the charge for ISIS. We had the video a couple of months ago about the leader of the LIFG fighting forces in Libya, which helped overthrow Gaddafi, is now leading ISIS in Libya. Well, some of those jihadists were brought across to Great Britain to be trained at military bases in Britain. There's all kinds of stories about how they were out raping people and all this kind of stuff. So now we've got jihadists threatening attacks in London. And again, we go back to my video, which I posted in the middle of December last year, saying ISIS attacks on Western countries were imminent. Up until then, there'd only really been one incident, which was the attack on the Canadian Parliament in October. Since then, we've had Paris, we've had the Sydney siege, we've had Copenhagen, and of course, last week we had Texas. So again, we put out that warning weeks before these attacks started taking place. And now they're all over Twitter again saying they're going to attack London, specific locations, taking photographs of the weapons and saying that this attack is coming soon.
And we know that the FBI had picked up these last 2 prison-recruited American jihadists who were being directed by ISIS and by Islamic State itself. And now they're saying they've got them in 48 states. They're ready to strike in 15. They're ready to strike because they've been allowed in. Paul, how many times did we write or cover on the radio or the news where I said 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, that this jihad army that the West has funded, NATO has supported, and Saudi Arabia has trained and coddled, along with Turkey and others, was going to start striking the West, and that would be used to take our basic liberties in phase 2 of the fake terror war. And now it's happened exactly as I said it would. And again, listeners who are new need to see all this. I have my limited crew busy working on new news. We've tried for 2 years to create a radio log to write all this down. We need to search. About 3 years ago, where I kept saying they're going to use jihadi groups out of the Middle East now that are allowed to fly back and forth to attack. This is now happening, and the government thinks we're so dumb that they're now not going to get the blame for funding these groups to begin with. The good news is I saw mainstream news articles this week admitting that our government helped create ISIS and that it's just a new offshoot of al-Qaeda. And then how can we have new terror attacks when they're going to leave the border wide open and let these jihadis fly back and forth? Remember, Paul, it was a SWAT who even Fox News had Justice Department officials on exposing the fact that the leader of the 7/7 bombings of the Patsies was MI6 and was protected. So it's just incredible, Paul, that this is going on.
And, you know, Alex, even before we started arming the so-called moderate Syrian rebels, Francois Hollande, the French president, admitted recently that he broke EU embargo laws to arm those rebels illegally before any of that happened. So we know it was already going on before that. Now we have reports, thousands of jihadists traveling from European countries into Syria and Iraq to join ISIS. And of course, thousands more are remaining here, and they're going to be the ones that are carrying out these attacks.
It is a worldwide jihad directed by the globalist. And when it's all done, they'll be given the Middle East as their reward to Saudi Arabia. And the globalists will be given the West, who they've protected from the very terrorists that they helped wind up and release in our society. I mean, it's crystal clear. And I go back to 2.5 years ago when Senator Paul and Senator Cruz, following our lead and our listeners' lead, I've got to brag, folks, it was us again, just like Jade Helm initiated the international debate. We forced, and the military joined us in tweeting out thousands of images with military, including non-commissioned officers and officers, holding up their pieces of paper saying, I will not fight for al-Qaeda in Syria. I will not fight for jihadis. I will not fight to do this. I will not be their air force. So now they just rebranded as ISIS and Islamic State. They've launched all these attacks, and I have predicted more than 500 times what is now happening. I have literally just left signposts up and red flags to the 1,000 wins. All of this ad nauseum until everyone was sick of hearing it. And now it appears that they are going to let these people launch this attack and then basically take our basic liberties. So we need, again, to have the military on Jade Helm and all of it come out and say, with signs they're holding up, we know Jade Helm is about going after the Tea Party. We need to expose it. And again, they want to use the military to say, how dare you be against the military? No, we're not against the military. We're against a mission that's unconstitutional. Shifting gears, Paul, I want to go back into al-Qaeda with their new name, because the public wasn't scared of al-Qaeda anymore. So now they're supposedly killing all their leadership in the last few months to give us the new bunch, the new generation of al-Qaeda. Same flag, same people, same funders. This time, though, it's a real proxy army. But what do you make of the Jade Helm coverage now going into the stratosphere? I mean, Bill Maher, The Daily Show, it's everywhere. And what does it sound to you, the story I told you, how I said, no, I'll only do live. Okay, you can do live. Well, now it's not live. We'll pick you up 3 hours before showtime to tape it. And I say no. They don't respond back and then send a car 12 minutes before. I mean, what does that sound like to you?
Well, it sounds like they either screwed up or did it deliberately. But the thing about Jade Helm is, where is the left? Most of this, most of these demonization campaigns are coming from the left, people like Jon Stewart and others, who suddenly seem to not give a damn about militarization of police, martial law. There are several articles today stating that, they were really up in arms after Bush began to take steps with the National Guard to turn that into more of a domestic law enforcement unit. Now it's a total conspiracy theory. That cannot possibly happen under Obama. So there's no concern whatsoever from the left about this. And in fact, now they're, bringing up the conspiracy theorist trope to downplay any concern about this, when we know that it's also dual purpose. If you flip the Jade Helm map around to the side, this is also about occupying countries, not only in the Middle East, but also in Eastern Europe as we build up for this new Cold War.
That's right. It fits perfectly over Eastern Europe. It fits perfectly over the Middle East. Everything the globalists do is multifaceted. That's why they call it mastering the human domain. And then we go look at all those events on C-SPAN, and other platforms, and it's an admission of the total takeover of the entire world, the main enemy, though, being veterans, gun owners, and others. And that's the problem that Jon Stewart and Stephanopoulos and all of them have, is that everybody who's informed has read the mainstream media's press saying, thank God the Pentagon's training to take on gun owners. Thank God they're training to take on the Tea Party and veterans. Thank God the IRS is auditing and arresting people who are conservatives. See, they have a problem. MSNBC goes on the air. I've seen it 3 times, and I barely monitor them. I've actually seen it live 3 times. Them praise the IRS persecuting. I mean, these people are flaming totalitarians. And so everybody knows this is happening who has a brain. And it transcends right-wing or left-wing, Paul. I think they've jumped the shark on this.
Well, I mean, look at how the left reacted to Syria. Look at how they reacted to Libya. They were gung-ho for those humanitarian interventions. Now we have U.S. troops training Syrian rebels still. This came out just last week to, quote, fight ISIS, when the majority of those rebels went and joined Jabhat al-Nusra.
Stay there. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, that's mainstream news, what we said 4 years ago. See, everything we say, it just keeps coming true because it was already true. We know what we're talking about. We've got our you-know-what together.
It was the great American humorist, Mark Twain, who said, loyalty to the country always, loyalty to the government when it deserves it. If Mark Twain were alive today, I think he would quickly conclude that loyalty to our government lost its due right after 9/11.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad that you could join us today for this Wednesday, July 25th, 2001 broadcast. Tyranny is enveloping the globe, and the United States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down, and they will use terrorism as the pretext to get it done. Look, we've seen the news stories that you've wanted to blow things up, that you have blown things up, and that you're saying that 4 million of us are going to die and we need martial law and the Associated Press at one of your little drills you had, and that we're aware of who the terrorists are if you pull this. This can stop this Hitlerian Reichstag event. I want to put the toll-free number up for Congress. And I won't want you to believe Alex Jones. I want you to go get these news stories off my website. I want you to call these major newspapers. I want you to find out these statements were true by the White House about preparing for martial law. And I want you to let them know that if there is any terrorism, we know who to blame.
We have a Congress that has an approval rating that is no longer detectable by current technology. A growing public awareness that the war of drugs has been manufactured by the CIA and organized by the DEA.
If you want to collect content on the American, then a court order is issued.
They are not, the National Security Agency is not listening to Americans' phone calls, and it is not reading Americans' emails. None of this programs allow that. As a matter of fact, the Patriot Act and that part of that 702 says it is expressly prohibited by law that you can read and wholly surveil domestic email traffic in the United States.
Even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded, and the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
Government law enforcement, namely the FBI, NSA, DHS, and TSA, illegally read our correspondences and listen to our communications while sexually fondling our families, all in the name of national security, which pitifully adds up to national insecurity. We have a military that is exponentially raping female soldiers, wives of soldiers, and any female unfortunate enough to live near a military base.
View. I don't know how you can say that having 19,000 sexual assaults and rapes a year is discipline and order. I do not understand how you can say that of those 19,000 cases to only have approximately 2,400 even reported because the victims tell us that they are afraid to report because of retaliation person, and the blame they will get and the scorn they will get from their colleagues is order and discipline. And I really cannot understand how 2,400 cases, only 240 of which go to trial, can result in you believing that that authority is giving you discipline.
There is something that seems odd about the power to reject findings that came out of a jury in the absence of some major obvious problem.
Meanwhile, the quiet rollout of Bill Clinton's 1033 program, mushrooming into the NDAA, has been building the militarized police force Goliath, while genuine usurpers beat down a path to the highest branches of our government.
But I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
The problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
That is only the first 4 minutes of a 8-minute report that John Bound did that aired on the Nightly News last week. Mark Twain would be ashamed to be an American today. It's on Infowars.com, and we're going to tweet it out again at Real Alex Jones. There's another very important interview that Leanne McAdoo did and that aired Friday on the Nightly News, and that was oldest World War II vet in the world. World's oldest World War II vet speaks out. He talks about the Second Amendment, you name it. Very interesting interview. We'll get that posted to Infowars and Facebook and Twitter as well for TV and radio listeners. Shifting gears back into our top story, it all ties together. You have the West training the Free Syrian Army, which is 90% al-Qaeda ISIS. We've had Colonel Schaefer and others to document that. Now major think tanks, and I've got it here in my stack, have come out, Brookings, you name it, and said, yes, we confirmed. In fact, here's one of them. Confirmed U.S. operation rooms backing al-Qaeda in Syria. U.S. policy think tank Brookings Institution confirms that, contrary to propaganda, U.S. Saudi moderates and Turkey, Qatar Islamicists have been coordinating all along. And then they're coordinating and commanding the groups in America, the UK, and the EU. So do you understand? I've told you this 500 times in the last 4 years or more. 500's conservative. And now I said you'll see them hit schools, convention centers, shopping malls, universities, things like that. And they won't have to have totally controlled groups. These are mentally ill bots hired by the jihadi commanders who themselves are funded and protected by the West and who can fly all over the world. Paul, this has reached outer limits on LSD. This has reached Twilight Zone on PCP. This has reached Bonkerland, DMT, Crazy Town, that our governments would do this publicly thinking they won't get caught or get in trouble. This is after the military figured out what was going on and said no 2 years ago. They just changed the name to ISIS, had them invade Iraq to resupply, with our military ordered to drop stuff to the Kurds, but really it's to them. I mean, this is so transparent, so obvious. Cy Hirsch came out 2 years ago and said the whole bin Laden thing's fake, didn't happen. He got put under pressure. So now he's come out, the two-time Pulitzer Prize winner, and said, well, you know, they basically raided a safe house and, you know, shot him, but nobody else shot at him, and most of the story's not true, and those are stage photos in the Situation Room, blah, blah, blah. No, it's beyond that. Paul Watson finishing up with this and getting into the huge news of ISIS saying they're about to hit with imminent attacks, showing the bombs and the packaging of the shrapnel weapons, the fragmentation devices that they're going to use. This is unprecedented And do you think this is a Western intelligence agency doing this to get more funding? Or do you think they're really about to green light their 200,000-man jihad force paid for by U.S., British, and EU taxpayers?
Well, there's kind of a disconnect, isn't there, Alex, where people say, well, you know, ISIS doesn't exist, it's all CIA, whatever, but we created these people by training the Syrian rebels in the first place, some of whom went on to join Jabhat al-Nusra, who then pledged allegiance to ISIS, so you can follow the trail. What's now emerging is these images of explosives, weapons, and suicide belts aren't to be found anywhere else on the internet, which suggests that these individuals on Twitter didn't just grab these pictures from Google Images and post them on Twitter. They're actual original images. And then one of the accounts that's making these threats is reportedly affiliated with another individual or an account affiliated with the Garland attack. Of course, we know that threat was tweeted out 15 minutes before the first shots were fired. So it appears that this is a genuine threat. It's not just wannabe ISIS sympathizers. It's actual terrorists who are tweeting out these images of explosives. Most of the accounts have now been suspended since we put our article out. But it's a drastic concern because we saw it happen just over a week ago in Garland.
And we had our Facebook suspended. It was going to be for a lengthy period, but backlash, they put it back up because we were exposing these groups. I mean, there's a clear bias against free speech. And folks, listen, the government knows what's going on. The establishment knows. Even the decompartmentalized, groups out there don't really like what's happening. It's very small criminal groups that are doing this, and most of the government is compartmentalized. The reason this show is so popular amongst government around the world is they know we know what we're talking about. And imagine, they can't go anywhere else and hear these real issues actually broken down. But it's not because we're special. It's because the mainstream media is bought and paid for. And as the late Gore Vidal, who I had the pleasure to interview 5 different times, once in person, an amazing mind, to keep information from the public is the function of the corporate media, Gore Vidal. And boy, talk about the apple falling far from the tree. That's Al Gore's uncle. But he exposed 9/11 as an inside job. He exposed synthetic terror and how the West was funding jihadi groups. And now it's all come out, 14 years after we first broke it, that Saudi Arabia, bare minimum, was protected and allowed the attacks of 9/11 to take place and financed them. And for that, I was royally demonized, royally attacked. I had the system go after me at every single level. And I'm not here wanting you to say, oh, thank you, you're a hero. I want you to understand the intel we've got, the understanding we've got, the info we've got, the narrative we've got is dead bang on. We know the enemy. We know who they are. We know the globalist master plan. We know their long-term program. We know their tricks. We know their playbooks. We understand their operations. And that's why every day, 200 to 500 news articles misrepresenting, lying, building straw men, attacking us. The globalists are really freaked out because they know that we got their number. They know that people like Cy Hirsch were in communication with us, asking us questions about sources and things like that. They know I've got real sources. They've tried to dry them all up, but people are just sick of it and are talking. What do you think Governor Abbott knows? What do you think Senator Cruz knows? As much as I know, they know even more. And here's my job, and here's Paul Watson's job, and here's my great Cruz job. We're here to make it safe to talk about this stuff, to hit the barbed wire first, to lead the assault team in the info war, to take the machine gun nest, the pillbox. We're here to take the heat, walk point, come under attack, hit it, get everybody looking at the documents so that it's safe for everybody else to follow. And that's fine. I'm charging all the way in, leading the assault. But just understand, we are the tip of the spear, the very front line. And if we can hold the globalists back and expose their programs and expose the private Federal Reserve and expose the globalists and get other talk show hosts doing it and other writers and research doing it, there'll be so many of us, we'll reach critical mass, they can't stop us or shut us all down. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've already crossed that point, and the enemy was arrogant, and that's why they're freaking out right now. And listen, I'm angry behind the scenes. I'm frustrated. I want to do a better job. I want to reach more people. I want to be able to give you all the research and data. I want to defeat these people. This is real. This isn't a game. It's not an act. This is the real deal. Because I've looked at the enemy. I've looked in the enemy's eyes. I've studied the enemy. Paul Watson, spend a few minutes. We're going to let you go. I appreciate your time and the great work you're doing. You've been hammering out articles. You wrote a quick one while we were busy, when you were on hold for 20 minutes. Seymour Hersh flashback, Bin Laden raid, one big lie. We're also posting separately where we expose the full hoax of the Bin Laden killing. We're going to post those interviews up to Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Because, quite frankly, I like Cy Hersh, but we're the ones that exposed it day 2. We're the ones that had the Navy SEAL families on. We're the ones that took the risk. And we're just so conservative about ourselves here that we won't even ever talk about what we've done or what we've been right about. There is a law that I can't break. Somehow, like a force field to take where we said what was happening and ever expose that we were right. But we're going to break it today. The videos will go up in their own article on Infowars.com. Paul Watson, before we go to break, the state of the world, where do you think the elite are? What do you think's unfolding right now?
Well, geopolitically, they're pouring gasoline on the fire, Alex. I mean, look at this headline out of CBS from 4 days ago. U.S. troops begin training Syrian rebels to fight ISIS. After everything we've been through, after the Libya catastrophe, after the near mutiny in the U.S. military before the invasion, the attack on Syria, which was stalled at the last minute, they're still sending U.S. troops to train these rebels, flooding the region with weapons, arming the rebels who have defected to ISIS and these other jihadist groups time and time again. And then you look at what's happening in Ukraine. Wall Street Journal last month reported U.S. Army starts to train Ukraine units. You actually dig into who these units are, these brigades. It's the Azov Battalion, which like to string people up on crosses and set fire to them. We had the video last month literally nailing one of these separatist fighters to a cross, setting fire to him as he burned to death. Those are the people that U.S. troops are now training in Ukraine. They're doing the same thing with more bloodthirsty militants in Syria. So how could we be surprised that these attacks, which thankfully, in the case of Garland, have proven to be sporadic and limited so far, but how can we be surprised that these attacks are now going to be hitting the West after our own governments have encouraged this for years and years at every single turn?
And the motive is let them attack, have the mainstream media never point out that our own governments funded them, created them, protected them, and allow them to attack. And then bet your bottom dollar we're going to be attacked when more attacks happen, Paul, for pointing out that our government allowed it to happen bare minimum.
And now these ISIS jihadists, here's a tweet. Americans take pride in carrying handguns. What's your little gun going to do when an IED explodes, spraying shrapnel faster than sound? So they're now demonizing the Second Amendment.
Oh, they're total cowards. Exactly. And our government's going to say, roll over, give your rights up when we get attacked. When we get attacked by their ISIS slobs, we're going to hold our traitorous government accountable. We're putting the narrative out now, and we've been doing it for 4 years. So when your jihad force, globalist, hits America and the Europe, you're going to get the blame. You hear that, Obama? You hear that, Henry Kissinger? You hear that, all of you? Northcom, Southcom? You're going to get the blame. I'm going to be honest, and I'm just going to tell folks a story about what happened at about 32 after. I'm in here during the break. I'm looking at all this news. I know the globalist plan. I know what they're going to do, how they're going to take us over, how they're going to enslave us. I've already seen 80% of their plan put in place in the last 20-plus years. And I just knocked my microphone right off the table and broke it. Just involuntarily, because I'm so frustrated watching these crimes be committed, watching our prosperity, our security, our freedom destroyed. I have 3 children. Thank God we had a couple backup mics. I mean, this is real, folks. Do you understand? Our government's been hijacked. It funded Al-Qaeda to come in out of the East in Benghazi and to take over that country and to kill tens of thousands of innocent people, to destabilize it and destroy it. And they go, ooh, we screwed up. That's the plan for the whole Middle East. That's the plan for here. Our government's putting radicals in. They're giving the radicals their bounty for being part of 9/11 and taking the blame for that false flag. This is them being paid off. Saudi Arabia being given the whole Middle East, who were British intelligence. You can go to YouTube and just type in Alex Jones breaks down history of the Saudis. It's from about a year ago, and I go over how they took over the whole Middle East, how they were going to attack us, what they're going to do. In fact, that's one place to find all this. How in 1903 they started. By 1933 they had the whole Middle East, British intelligence funding them. This is a plan. Paul Watson's wrote about it. We've broken it down, and we're seeing it. Paul, that's when I knew. They were giving them real weapons, recruiting out of the West, letting them fly back and forth. It was so clear. How do they launch the next terror wave? How do they make it bigger than 9/11? Well, you just turn loose tens of thousands of jihadis in your country and then let them hit you. Paul, do you think the establishment in closing can get away with this?
Well, yeah, if they continue doing it, I don't see what's stopping them. I mean, we've got politically correct concern about, oh, there are these thousands of young people, impressionable young people, going over to Syria to fight for ISIS. How are we going to get them back? Why the hell would we want them back?
That's right. There's BBC articles about we need to bring back the jihadis and put them through a seminar to de-radicalize them. That's the cover to bring them back to attack, Paul.
It's amazing.
I got an idea. They're over there blowing up churches and killing people. How about we grab them when they come back, and if they've committed crimes, how about we give them a trial and execute their ass for war crimes? How about a Nuremberg trial? And how about a Nuremberg trial for the people that trained them in our government? How about that, Paul? That's what sounds good to me.
And then the whole narrative in the media is, you know, Pamela Geller was being provocative for drawing these cartoons. It's not about the frigging cartoons when you've got ISIS members who are linked to the Garland attack openly threatening to attack London, giving precise locations, and CNN still, you know, impugning Pamela Geller for holding this Muhammad art exhibit. So we can't rely on the mainstream media to draw attention to any of this because they've failed to do so time and time again. In the interest of political correctness, where any criticism of Islam is treated as a hate crime, as Islamophobia.
Meanwhile, Kurt Nimmo's got the headline, dubious ISIS terror threat as Patriot Act comes up for reauthorization. I agree with that overall, but no, it's terror wind-up toy released to menace America into accepting the reauthorization of the Patriot Act. Paul Watson, thank you so much. Great job. We'll be back with the second hour. And David Icke, stay with us. I haven't even gotten, and I never even played yesterday, but a third of the This Week with Stephanopoulos and the Mr. Ed person they had hosting the show. It wasn't Stephanopoulos. It wasn't that girl. It was Radis or Rat or Rodent or something. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. I was supposed to debate the Rat. And but then the Rats never set up the interview, so then they just claimed I didn't show up, as if I wouldn't show up to a live TV debate. I mean, just, and people are so funny. I was at brunch yesterday for Mother's Day with my parents, and my dad was actually going, "You're afraid, like I'm 10 years old, and that it makes me mad. It doesn't make me mad that they're saying I'm chicken. It makes me mad that adults, including my father, are acting like 10-year-olds. That's what's upsetting to me, and that I wish I'd have been on there live." Let's go to the clip. of Radis.
Our thanks to David. Radio talk show host Alex Jones, who, as David said, has been one of the leading proponents of this theory, had agreed to join us this morning, but he did not show up at our studio. So let's bring back the round table.
You're in charge, you lying sack of crap.
Boy, this got some real legs, this story, and it certainly had to do
Turn
with
off that.
Greg
Look at all
Abbott
these people. Look at these mummies. Look at these propagandist jokes.
Vocal minority, and I'm all in favor of it.
Yeah. There's a vocal minority. Everything's fine. There's no police state. There's no NSA spying. There's no open borders. There's no IRS persecuting innocent people everywhere. Oh, wait, there is. Hey, but the good news is Obama and his Obamacare cuts your health care down to, well, it's free. Oh, wait, no, it's not free. It cuts the price down to your phone bill. Oh, wait, doesn't do that. It doubles or triples it. Well, at least there's no death panels. Well, actually, there are. I just am sick of looking at these people. In fact, let's roll some of the video. Back it up 10 seconds where they cut to this one pundit. And he's like, listen, you can not trust your government. That's fine. But you got to trust the military. Oh, really? Run by the government? Imagine 1939. Hey, Hitler's really bad. How dare you not like the German military? Well, listen, you can say whatever you want about the government, but don't you talk bad about our military. The military was run by Adolf Alois Hitler. It'd be like saying, you can say whatever you want about Lenin or Stalin, but don't you talk bad about our military. Why, anything they do is good. Oh, yeah, right. Great. It's our military that said no to being the Air Force and physically fighting side by side with al-Qaeda. I had Tosh Plumlee, admitted CIA on, to break down the NATO and other sources of arming al-Qaeda 2 years ago. It's time to get him back on. Had him on this year as well. He had the Justice Department come after him. I mean, he talked to the people who were there in the rebellion because they'd get there at these airfields to offload weapons, and it'd be jihadis going, you American trash, we're going to kill you. And there was fist fights and things. I told you this before Plumlee came on. Is that another source? There were fights at these bases. Just like my grandfather worked for oil companies as a lease hand out in West Texas and New Mexico, and he told me some of the stories when I was a kid. My mom would just go, well, your grandfather, is kind of eccentric. Because, that's just the eccentric grandpa who actually lived it, about how he almost got in fist fights, and there were fights at these military bases in the West, because that's the only place you can go eat. There's nothing out in the desert. But to go eat at the bar where they got chicken fried steaks. And the Germans would be in there from paperclip, shooting their mouths off to the World War II vets about how much better they were and stuff, and people got tired of it. Well, imagine, you're sitting there and there's an al-Qaeda slob that you're delivering giant crates of weapons to. I just wish our military would have just cut them all down right there. I mean, there's a certain point where people can't put up with this crap anymore. You damn politicians. Well, Cy Hirsch, two-time Pulitzer Prize winners, come out, basically said that a lot of the official story on the bin Laden raid is a hoax. You can go to Infowars.com and see the videos we shot 4 years ago when it first broke, where we document how the entire thing is fake, including many things that have now been admitted as true, and Navy SEAL families that we talked to who came out and said that it was all made up and that a body double was basically killed. I'll break all that down at the start of the next hour. Jade Helm has blown open worldwide, from the German to the Japanese to the Financial Times of London. It is big. We just have so much to go over. We have this new election in England that is supposedly about giving the UK a voice in the EU. We're going to get David Icke's take on that. Now, David Icke is a very controversial figure. He's a friend of mine. I've met him, hung out with him, been involved with him. He's a very nice guy. He's a trailblazer. He's written a bunch of best-selling books. The first one I read was like 19 years ago. I thought it was completely crazy. And so much of it then began to come true. He said and named pedophiles at the BBC here about 12 years ago, and I delayed him. I delayed him and said, David, you can't say names on air that haven't been caught yet. And with the Jimmy Savile and others, it all came out just as he said. The hidden rooms, the torture rooms, the necrophilia, all of it. And it just goes on and on. David Icke was a top BBC presenter on entertainment and sports show, champion goalie. He was the head of the Green Party, a rising star until he had a vision. And it took him years to extrapolate everything that happened in the vision when he was in Peru. Say what you want about it, a mega brainstorm if you're an atheist, whatever. The point is, he's a very interesting individual. And I remember reading one of his books, I even forget which one, about 10 years ago, and I was starting to think, maybe this guy's on to something more than I thought. And he was saying the whole universe is a hologram held together by an artificial energy source. Well, last year, MIT came out with these new dark matter sensors. We'll pull those articles up. And they said there's something artificial holding reality together, another energy source much larger, much more powerful. And Science Daily wrote a new article about this a few weeks ago, April 27th. Is the universe a hologram? Vienna University of Technology, and says that their mathematical equations, but also models, but also testing in a lab is showing that reality is a projection. And so I wanted to get David Icke on to talk about this till the bottom of the hour. Then we're going to shift gears into ISIS and global destabilization and the pedophile rings and what's at the bottom of the spider hole. DavidIcke.com is his website. He's written 16 books, and he is, again, on the air with us. His first big book, the one that I read, was The Biggest Secret. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure, Alex.
There's a lot to get through. Where are you right now? Are you out there on the Isle of Man?
Isle of Wight. The difference between the Isle of Man and the Isle of Wight is the Isle of Man has it's a tax haven. So the Isle of Wight's not. That's where I live.
Well, it's certainly beautiful out there. I haven't been to that particular area, but I've seen videos of it. David, there's so much to get into. I want to talk about the state of the world with you, but let's talk about the state of reality.
Well, the thing is, Alex, you know, I've been on this just past 25 years, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I've had as much ridicule and condemnation from the alternative media, much of it, as I have from the mainstream media, because my interest is not having a statue built to me or being fated as anything. It is quite simple. It is to get to the bottom of what the hell is happening in this world and what this world is. And when you do that, it means all the shackles have to come off your mind, your credulity, and you have to become open, not to believing everything, but open to all possibility, and letting the information be your guide rather than preconceived idea. And so that's what I've done. I followed the information, and it's taken me into some very, on the face of it, strange areas, and to some strange and to many people extreme conclusions. But I've said all along that if what you say has validity, then you will eventually be shown to be making some kind of sense. And so, you know, everyone in the alternative media has to take ridicule, dismissal, and condemnation to an extent, because they are challenging the accepted programmed norms that people are downloading throughout their lives from cradle to grave. But if you keep going beyond where the majority, if you like, the mainstream of the alternative media is, then you get the same treatment from them that you get from the mainstream media. But, like I say, if you're interested in the rather than the popularity contest, then you keep speaking your truth, you keep researching your truth, and if it is truth, then at some point it's going to be shown to be so. And what is happening now with some of these more these stranger areas of what I've been thinking about, like the nature of the holographic reality that we live in, is that mainstream scientific programs and studies, there's another one at the University of Bonn, and there are others around the world, are concluding that actually the mathematics, the science, points to the fact that we are living in a reality that is solid in the way that we experience it and we perceive it, but actually not solid in its base form. If you look at a computer system, what you have behind me here is a screen. And on that are words, and there are pictures, and there can be moving pictures. But that's not because the moving pictures and words and what have you, graphics, have actually been put into the computer in that form. They go into this tower, or they come off the internet in the form of electronic codes and electronic sequences of processes. It's the computer that decodes that information into what we see on the screen, which is very different to the form that it actually takes before it's coded. And what we call the human body is a biological computer. Biological in the sense that it's different from a technological computer, in that instead of like a desktop, it takes data and it decodes it according to the way it's told to and is programmed to decode. A biological computer can take information and it can assess it and it can make decisions upon it, which is the body's doing all the time. What we call the immune system is not something that we have to interact with all the time. We don't have to say, oh, immune system, there's something wrong down there with me leg. Can you go and have a look? The immune system is constantly scanning the body computer, and it is making decisions on what it's going to do as a result of that. Otherwise, we'd all be dead. And so in the same way, the biological computer we call the body is decoding information from this matrix, this technologically in the end, although much beyond any technology we can imagine, this technologically generated information source and sources. And we are therefore seeing and appearing to experience a world that appears to be solid, that appears to be three-dimensional, but is actually holographic. And if you look at what holograms are that we actually can buy in the shops, they appear to be three-dimensional, but they're actually not. The base form of this reality, the base form of the body, the base form of everything in this reality is an information field. And we then decode the information from that into an apparently three-dimensional world, and a solid world, which, as quantum physics has absolutely shown to be the case, a solid world that cannot possibly be solid. Now, why is this important, Alex? It's because it's with this knowledge that those deep in the shadows, beyond the politicians, beyond the bankers, in the way that they operate the banking system, beyond the corporations.
Would you call them the visitors?
Well, beyond that which we can see, indeed within the human world, beyond that we can see. I mean, the idea now among anyone with a brain on active duty that people who are apparently in power, like politicians and presidents and prime ministers, are actually the ones calling the shots is completely untenable and totally ludicrous. But what I'm saying is beyond that, beyond what we see in the shadows, they know the nature of our reality. Therefore, they are using that knowledge against
Stay
us
there. Your Skype's cutting up a bit, David. Excellent point. I'm going to come back and recap that and then ask the question, how are they understanding how the world really works, manipulating it, and towards what end? Because undoubtedly, all the subliminals, all the programming, the chemicals in the food and water to suppress our IQs, what's the end game? What's the reason? We're talking about the mysteries of the universe. And I remember over 10 years ago reading a David Icke book and having him on and talking about a hologramic reality and an artificial hack holding it all together. And then MIT came out 2 years ago. In fact, I ought to Google and find that article. We're showing a few new ones today, different universities saying basically the same thing, that there's an artificial power source holding it all artificially together, the dark matter and the different dimensional equations that are out there. But regardless, it's good to think about big things and transcend the little globalists who want to wall us in to an even smaller reality. Everything they do is about dumbing people down, destroying their creativity, their imagination. And we can see this war accelerating, a desperate attempt to ridicule, questioning anything. So I think David Icke's very healthy in that he simply transcends their whole false debate. This is a short segment, long segment coming up. David, I've been researching this myself 25 years. I've been on air 20. And the deeper I research it, you just come to the realization this isn't even good for the elites. As you said, the super puppets, the super class. When you get to the bottom of the rabbit hole, as far as I've gone, it's a hatred of life, a hatred of humans, a hatred of anything wholesome and good, and real sustainability. It's just blacker than hell. It is a spirit of evil. And if you're Christian, you say it's the devil. If you're a Hindu, I guess something similar. But the point is, it's real. And there seem to be people that are energized, possessed, running that program in their mind. And then you look at the research, and I've infiltrated Bohemian Grove, as you know. I've covered Skull and Bones. I mean, even an atheist would look at this and say, these people really believe they're getting divine information from dark entities that want human blood in every culture. And you've talked about that. You've written books about that. So regardless, from a sociology, anthropology perspective, why does this keep manifesting? And then you just go further, but then say so many other things that, I mean, you were the first person I heard 20 years ago talking about pedophiles running England. Now it's confirmed. Now they say national security can't investigate. I'm taking up your time here. It just blows me away. What are they trying to suppress? What reality are they trying to suppress? What's the end game, David Icke?
Right, I'm on the phone now, which you can see.
Yes, it's crystal clear now. Thank you, sir.
Audio, yeah. Well, just from what you've kind of listed there, Alex, I mean, I could speak for like 2 hours because there's so many elements to it. But what you were talking about is summed up by a word I've used over and over the years, and that's inversion. We are living in an inversion, and therefore a world that could be about love, that could be about harmony, is inverted. So it's about hatred, it's about disharmony, or that's what this network, both seen and hidden, is trying to create. And so when you talk about these entities, which go under endless names. I mean, you know, one of the frustrating things, Alex, is when I hear people who follow various religions who say, you know, things that I say are a load of nonsense or it's anti their religion. They should read their religious books a bit more, because what some cultures refer to, and ancient cultures and peoples refer to as archons, i.e., non-human entities manipulating our world through these networks that we talk about and expose. So the Christians talk about demons, exactly the same thing. In the Islamic belief system, they talk about jinn, same thing. In Central America, shaman talk about the flyers, same thing. In the Zulu culture of South Africa, they talk about the Chitahuri, same thing. It's a universal theme. And what these entities, another universal theme, feed off is the energy of death and suffering. You know, when that's your energy source, what do you want to do? You want to create more and more of that energy source. So what happens? You create a society, a fake reality, a matrix that is designed, and a hierarchical structure of power and imposition that is designed to create maximum amounts of that energy.
Well said, DavidIcke.com. We've got to go to break. I'm going to give you the floor when we come back. 18-minute segment coming up. I'm your host, Alex Jones. We're live here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. We return weeknights, 7 o'clock Central for InfoWars Nightly News. Find all the showtimes, listing, and details at prisonplanet.tv. We know the history we're given is not the real history of what's happened on this planet. The elites themselves are obsessed basically with what you see in the movie Prometheus. That's what MIT and Harvard, even the New York Times, the majority of their scientists believe that the planet was terraformed, that we were put here. The elites believe that they're another species from us. That's in the BBC and other major publications. This is what they believe. And then you've got David Icke, a top news presenter, making millions of pounds over the years, very successful, a shining star in the UK media, the head of the Green Party. And he basically, like, I guess you could say, like Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus, gets knocked down, heat stroke, whatever you want to call it. I want him to talk about that briefly, and suddenly has all this information. And again, he didn't have a motive to do all this when he was already on top. He was ridiculed for a decade intensely, was like the joke. He can tell you the story, but I followed it. And so regardless, he's got amazing courage, and so much of what he said, scientifically, politically, has come true. And I want to cover the waterfront, because it's hard to get David Icke on. He's a busy guy. Maybe he can stay a few minutes in the next hour. But that was a short segment, David. I want to give you the floor about what's at the bottom of the rabbit hole, and then tying it in. But you look at the environmental movement. It ignores genetic engineering. It ignores nuclear reactors, 90% leaking. A new one in the U.S. had an explosion, and they shut down a reactor. It's not even hardly news. The elite themselves don't care about the planet, but they have a predatory hatred of their fellow humans and are teaching us that human life is worthless, and teaching us not to stand up for each other, and teaching us this inverse. They say the star symbolizes a human, the head, 2 arms, 2 legs. The pentagram is a human upside down. But they're selling this, and I see this glare in people's eyes who've succumbed to this spirit of the world versus those of us that, not that I'm perfect, more and more are going towards love and freedom and compassion and being empowered. So I see an acceleration towards a paradox where there's a huge amount of people awake and intensifying their understanding, but also a large group of people that are going to get crazier and crazier and more turned over to this crazed spirit. David Icke, you've got the floor for the next 15 minutes.
Thanks, Alex. I wish I had made millions at the BBC. Yeah.
But you were one of the top people in the country, according to mainline news articles.
Yeah, I was on the television a lot, but millions, my goodness me. You used to wear BBC jackets, small checks, But anyway, what we're talking about here is, I would suggest, where the alternative media needs to start turning its head, because much of the alternative media, and I'm not knocking it, I mean, hold my hand up. Anyone who's putting out information that's suppressed and this network doesn't want out, round of applause, I say. But much of it is walking around the edge of the rabbit hole. It's not actually in it yet. So deep does it go. We have a situation where, to answer your question, and people say this all the time, why would they destroy the planet? Why would they have the Fukushimas? Why would they be filling our atmosphere with staggering millions and millions of times more radiation than there was 50 years ago? Why are they creating this, transformed radiation atmospheric reality? What about the chemtrails and their part in all this? What's going on? Why would they do this? Because we have to, I would suggest, face the fact that we are being manipulated, and this planet is being taken over. This reality of ours is being taken over by entities that operate beyond human sight, and human sight is so narrow, it's almost laughable, what scientists call visible light. It's a tiny, almost infinitesimal fraction of what there is to see. And because we, through these biological computers, can only see a certain, just ridiculously, I can't tell you, narrow frequency band, which we see as a visual world, it means that anything that is on a different frequency to that band, which is in effect everything else that exists, we can't see. And these entities and this force operates outside of our, most of the time, outside of our frequency band that we can actually see. But what it does, because it's an inversion of the natural order is about love, it's about balance, it's about harmony. So what we have is an inversion of the natural order. That's their world. I mean, this is where the religions talk about, you know, the hell and all that stuff. And what they're doing is seeking to change our world into theirs so they can take it over. And what they've done up to this point is create a network of hybrid interbreeding bloodlines that we call royalty right back into history. Why were the royals, of all the cultures, claiming the right to rule? Because of their bloodline, because it was the bloodlines, as they saw it, of the gods, which is how they perceived these entities. And then when the people started to reject over royal dictatorship, they went into the dark suits. They became the bankers, the major politicians. They became the corporate heads. They became the people that run our society, our world, both in the world that we can see and in the shadow.
Now, from your view, are they interdimensionally possessed, like the Bible would say, or are they actually genetically hybrids?
Well, both, for this reason. What we've got, as I mentioned earlier, what we've got to start to realize, if we're going to grasp this situation that we're facing, is what we see as a three-dimensional world, solid world, i.e. the body, is a projection, exactly what these scientists are talking about. It's a projection. It's a projection from the base form, which is the energetic field. Just as these pictures on a computer are a decoded representation of information in other forms within the computer. Therefore, what we are experiencing is a fake reality, because what we are experiencing as the three-dimensional world is not the place of love and harmony and balance that it should be, but an increasing inversion of it, which is what? The opposite of that. Because these entities feed off the frequency of death, because everything has a frequency, of suffering, of deprivation, of fear. This is the major four-letter word that controls the world. It means that to take over our reality, they have to generate maximum amounts of that energy. So they have structured society through these bloodlines that end up in the positions of power to create maximum amounts of that energy. So look through known human history. Endless wars, endless suffering, endless deprivation, hunger, destruction, getting more and more all the time. And what they're doing is imposing their world, their inverted world, upon us. And the more they do so, the more power they have to influence this world, because we're getting closer in frequency to where they are. And so when you look at the word live, what is the word live inverted, written backwards? Evil. What we call evil is just an inversion of the natural order of life, of joy, of love. And the idea is that they eventually so transform our energetic frequency state that our world literally becomes theirs, and they won't even need their bloodlines then. What we've what we need.
So you're saying it's like an avatar. They've got humans that operate as their Earth suits. They want to change the atmosphere, like terraforming us, to then take over completely.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain movies, in fact, more and more movies, Alex, that actually mirror this and what's happening. Now, classically, what I'm describing in terms of this fake reality that we decode and believe, therefore, to be real is the Matrix. The world depicted by the Matrix trilogy is absolutely the one that we live in its theme. And then you rightly talk about the Avatar movie, which again was mirroring reality. What happened there? You had the Na'vi society, the Blue People Society, that was taken over by people that looked outwardly as if they were the Na'vi, the Blue People, but actually within that form, that outer form, was the force in the Avatar movie that was taking over that reality. And that's what we're experiencing. And this is why I say, with as much a passion as I could muster to the alternative media, you know, what's been done so far in uncovering the 5 sense level of this is brilliant, fantastic, round of applause, you know, punch the air, let's have a cheer. But if we're going to understand how we're manipulated ultimately, and therefore create an understanding of how not to be deep in the rabbit hole, we've got to start opening minds to the fact that what's happening with the banking system and ISIS and engineered wars and engineered banking crashes and engineered political systems is the play out, the projection, which is there to manipulate our society within the holographic world that we experience, but actually where it's coming from is beyond human sight. And this is very difficult for people to grasp because from cradle to grave, all this stuff is ridiculed and dismissed as crazy. Now, let me ask this question. If this stuff is so crazy, why do these people in their satanic rituals and their secret society rituals, the deep, extreme ones, why do they interact with another force beyond human sight? They're interacting with what? What Christians call demons, what the Islamic world calls jinn. They are interacting with these entities. That's why they do it. And in terms of possession, everything is a frequency. Thus, what your type of genetics is dictating the frequency of your body, your biological computer. Therefore, those hybrid bloodlines that have a far, far greater infusion of this archon, if you like, demonic, whatever you want to call it, genetics in the hybrid, that means that their frequency is much closer to that of these entities. Thus, they become possessible on a scale that even the massive humans are not possessible in that frequency sense.
So you're saying they're basically drivable. They have the software to interface.
Exactly. What these bloodlines are, Alex, is basically a particular type of biological computer which allows these entities which have no empathy, which feed off death, which glory in death, which love death, for which death is their reality. They are vehicles for these entities to manipulate our world. So when you look at these bloodlines and how they can create mass murder in what we call wars, how they can do the unbelievable things they do that create the shocking, unspeakable terror, horror, and suffering that they do, and people kind of have dismissed that. You'll have come across this. Oh, no, they'd never do that. No, you would never do that because you have the ability to empathize. You have the ability to take an understanding of the feelings and the suffering that your actions are making other people suffer. Once you are of if you like, a genetic type and of a consciousness, this demonic consciousness, you have none of those fail-safe mechanisms of behavior. Not only do you not have empathy with the suffering you cause, you love it because you feed off it. And so these people are not seeing the world the way we see it. Look at bankers and the way they make people suffer all over the world by their manipulation of finance. They feed off that, and there's a word for it. Ask anybody, go to the dictionary, look up this word, or go on the internet and look for a definition of this word, and you will find that the definition of it is exactly the personality type that I have just described, the word psychopath. Why do we have psychopaths running the world in all these areas, all these institutions that dictate society? Why are we having, Alex, more and more psychopaths systematically recruited into law enforcement to impose the will of the political, corporate, banking psychopaths upon the people? Because the psychopathic mentality is the mentality of these archontic demonic entities, and it's just been transferred through, for the reasons I talk about, into our reality through these particular bloodlines, which don't just operate in the elite, they operate within human society as well. Now, you've mentioned pedophilia, because all these dots connect. All these dots connect because if they didn't, then it couldn't be true, because everything connects in the end. What these entities want to feed off almost more than anything else is the energy of children before puberty. We see the point of puberty as a hormonal change. Yes, within the hologram, where people see the body in terms of its physical functions or hormone functions, it is a hormonal change. But the hormonal change is merely a holographic expression of an energetic change in the base field. And thus, what they want is the energy of children before that puberty energetic change happens.
And let me briefly stop you for a moment. Whether or not this is demonic, spiritual, or whatever, for anybody out there, it's a fact that every civilization ends up falling to secret society cults that demand burning or chopping or eating or cutting the hearts out of children. Every culture ends up being run by people that build temples, generally pyramids, and then want to do this to children, whether it was in Europe, whether it was in the Middle East, whether it was in Africa, whether it was in Mesoamerica. Every culture ends up going to human sacrifice, and the children are what are coveted. So what is that? What is happening? I mean, you can't deny that. I mean, normal people would never even think of such a thing. And I have that question A. And then B, David, I'm a very loving person. I have intense empathy. But when someone messes with my family or someone, when I think about these elites, then I have fiery rage and, you know, the propulsion to strangle them. Now, I understand that negative, violent energy is bad, and you know, that's what the dark side's into. But what would you call the energy on the other side to stand up and crush these people?
Well, you know, there's this ancient theme throughout history of cultures sacrificing young virgins to the gods. Well, the gods are these entities, and young virgins is just code for children, for the very reasons I'm talking about. And the reason, Alex, that there is such a massively greater ratio, I mean, there are so many in the general population, it's staggering, but the reason there's a far greater ratio of pedophiles in the upper echelons, did I say upper echelons of society, is because of they are possessed people, possessed entities, possessed biological computers. And while the sexual act is going on with the child, these entities are drawing off through the conduit, if you like, of the pedophile, the child's energy. And it's not just in the modern world that you see this and come across this.
They're vampires.
You look, they're vampires. They're energetic vampires. Now, that's an interesting point for this reason. What do Satanists do? They feed off blood. They drink blood. Blood is vital to them. What does blood carry? It carries the genetic code for a start, but also the blood is a expression of the energy that I'm talking about.
They like to terrorize a child first, then slit their wrist and basically bleed them out over several hours to get the maximum torture. Psychopaths talk about using somebody up, and that horrifying them gives them an energy. I mean, undoubtedly, this is going on.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we call acupuncture, people say, oh, they put needles in the toe to cure a headache. It's nonsense. So, well, no, actually, you're just ignorant, mate. What acupuncture is doing is, through the needles and other processes, it's balancing the energy flows through what are called meridians. Now, these can be identified. These can be shown to exist. They are lines of energy going all around the body. And because they go in circuits, if you've got a block in the circuit that's in your foot, that's where the block is, it can affect the head where that circuit also goes through. And so to take the block out of the foot or the toe or wherever can remove the effect, which is the headache. Now, what these meridian lines of energy are, what the Chinese called energy qi, they are the energetic expression of the blood system, of the arteries within the hologram. And so what the Satanists in our reality are doing are drinking the energy of that person via the conduit of blood, while the entities beyond human sight, some of them within these more extreme satanic rituals, actually within sight of the Satanists in the ritual. I've talked to endless Satanists who've described this manifestation of these entities in some of these really powerful rituals. They are feeding off the energy of the person directly in an energetic form because they're taking the energy on another frequency beyond human sight. And that's what they're feeding off. And so when you have a war, when you have what this ISIS organization is doing, when you have suffering of any kind in the way that we see in this bloodletting, what is a war? It's a bloodletting frenzy. And what these entities are doing with that energy is feeding off it. If we had a world of harmony, of love, of balance, these entities would not be able to exist here because their energy source will...
Well, I've talked to a lot of veterans and a lot of from World War II on, and they say, they won't talk about it, but they say during mass death, the weirdest stuff goes on.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that's because the energy is so much stronger in those areas. And would it be if we could see like a bunch of vultures converging more of these entities in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's so much art. There's so much. I mean, I'm not into what my father used to call bricks and mortar religion, and I'm not. I wouldn't give what the way I see the world a name. But there is so much in religious texts, which are ancient texts that are recalling and recording things that went on a long time ago, which are actually telling the very story that I'm telling here. But they don't. People don't see that connection. Once you read the stories from the point of view of what's happening now, it all starts to make sense. The reason these people don't act like what we would call humans, these bloodlines, these networks of evil, is because they're not like us. They don't see the world like us. If we could just see the world through their eyes for 5 minutes, the whole world and everything that happens in it would suddenly fall into place. We'd go, oh, I see it now. That's why this is going on. And so it's, you know, the idea that within this narrow band, this ridiculously narrow band of frequency scientists call visible light, that we can know everything, whether it's mainstream or alternative or whatever, is a form of extreme ignorance as well as a form of extreme arrogance. Thus, whatever we know is what we know now or think we do. There's always, always vastly more to know. And if the alternative media comes to a certain list of conclusions and stops and won't go any further, then they're not going to get to that point where we go beyond the movie screen that we see to the projector that's projecting the movie.
Well, David Icke, here's what I know. What the globalist is doing, well, what we can prove is so over the top, and I want to keep you a little bit longer if you can do it to finish up and talk about what you got coming up next, that the sky is already the limit. And I want to talk about, I want to discuss with you some of those things we know are going on that are crazy, and then ask you where you think it's all going. David Icke, davidicke.com. I probably interviewed David Icke, let's not exaggerate, 50 times in the last 18 years or so. And I've had a chance to hang out with him a few times in person, and he puts off a really good vibe. I think David Icke means what he's saying. I think he is very eccentric, and I mean that in a good way. And I think in my gut, I know, it's very healthy to just completely go a trillion miles out from this, to look at it from way far back, and then come back and look at it real close, because I look at this world, and let me tell you, folks, we're not in Kansas anymore. And I can't get the public to just admit what's real. I mean, what's admitted in the five senses. And then I just pick up well, I see the trail of destruction behind the globalists, but then I pick up on the way they act, the way they behave. And I've been around a lot of their minions, and it's like their minions aren't even really alive until they're doing something bad, and then they kind of activate and manifest. And I bet it's even wilder than what David Icke's saying. I mean, my gut more and more, and it's never been wrong, just tells me that we're in the middle of something so fantastic. He'll be with us to 20 after. This is a short segment. David, how is the fight going against the psychopaths and their group consciousness, if you look at it from an atheist perspective or, you know, from any other perspective, regardless, this is going on. How is the fight going for human consciousness? Because they're really pouring it on right now to suppress people awakening. And I think this was what you said 15 years ago is true. I see this year and next year, the next few years, as a critical time.
Yeah, it is, because in the end, it's a choice. People say, how will it turn out? Well, it depends on the choices that are being made. What you will see now, Alex, is something I've been talking about for a long time, and what we now see. I mean, I was reading an article today which was basically asking the question, what the heck is happening to the human race? Some of these extraordinary things going on with people biting people's faces off and stuff like that it was talking about. Well, going back to what I've been talking about here, the awakening is the awakening to harmony. It's the awakening to balance. And the more you awaken to that, the more you open your mind and expand your mind, the more you start to see the world in a greater and greater way in terms of seeing what's really happening, as opposed to what is supposed to be happening and we're told is happening. People start to see things. And what do they say? They say, why didn't I see it before? It's so obvious. Because your mind was closed before, and thus when it was closed, it was picking up a certain band of perception. And now you are expanding your mind and literally opening your mind to a greater possibility. Now you're picking up a much wider frequency of insight, of possibility. Thus, you're seeing things differently. But on the other side, what we're seeing is people that are getting pulled more and more into this inversion, becoming more and more an expression of that inversion. So we're seeing, I would, if you people read my books from 10, 15 years ago, or 15 years ago, they'll say I was talking about the fork in the road, the parting of the ways. And we're seeing it. Those that are awakening to a greater understanding of the world, and those who are getting more and more pulled into it. And maybe next time I come on, Alex, we can relate what I've said here to the transhumanist agenda.
Let's do that when we come back. We've got 12 minutes when we come back. Let's just do a preview. If you want to come back soon, we'd love to have you. DavidIcke.com. Tell us about some of your new speaking engagements coming up. People can find all that at DavidIcke.com. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. We're looking at the big picture here today, pulling back, getting David Icke's perspective on the world. And I'll tell you this, it's a lot more accurate than what we're getting from people like, Piers Morgan. Well, we're going deep down the rabbit hole today with David Icke. I'm your host, Alex Jones. DavidIcke.com is his website. Our sites are PrisonPlanet.com and Infowars.com. I've got a few geopolitical questions for David here in a moment. We'll get him back soon if he'll come on and do a whole breakdown. I know he does like 12-hour, 10-hour seminars to thousands, tens of thousands, in some cases around the world. And I think it's healthy because people need to break with the system. I mean, everything they do is about lying and hoaxing and deceiving. And David, you were talking about the fork in the road. People are either really waking up or they're going deep into the mind control. Diabetes is up several %,000% in the U.S., spreading into Europe. I know it's not supposedly transmittable, but the point is the things we're having put in our food and water are that help trigger it. We've got so much happening. We've got cancer exploding. We've got just all forms of evil intensifying. We've got in the media and the culture just selling the most horrible things, and where torturers of children are actually the good guys. You can see the inverse taking action. And you can't just chalk it up to deviance or to decadent societies going into decline. This is a manifestation of evil. And the churches won't fight it. They're busy glitter bugging and, teaching magical thinking to people that, they'll tell God what to do and all this bizarreness. What is it all headed towards, David? And are we winning as free humanity? I mean, if this was a soccer game, a football game, where are we?
Well, having just passed the point of 25 years on this journey, and looking what it was like then to what it is now in terms of people being aware that the world's not like they thought it was. Well, I mean, we have made the most fantastic strides, the most fantastic achievement in what we've managed to do so far. But where's it leading? I mean, because everything connects to everything else, everything you say comes in and connects somewhere. So, I've been having a chat today to a friend of mine who has studied DNA and seen DNA in various studies it's been involved in. And what he was saying is DNA is definitely getting weaker, and it's definitely mutating. Something's going on at that level big time. I was reading a story, it was on my website, and probably others too, I think it was yesterday, where a scientific study, mainstream, has looked at the DNA of the poor, the urban poor as they call them, in Detroit, and found that DNA is being fundamentally affected to the point where it is reducing more and more significantly the length of life of those people. This all fits. Why? Because DNA and RNA, which is fundamentally connected, are receiver transmitters of information. That's what they are. They receive and transmit.
And they're being told to die. They're being told to turn off.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of what I mean. A Russian scientific study changed frog embryos to salamander embryos by broadcasting the information of the salamander embryo to the frog embryo and transformed it, right? Now, why can they do that? Because DNA is a receiver transmitter of information. And I said before, everything is a frequency. So healthy food, healthy organic food, clean water is a frequency. Polluted water, hello, genetically modified food is another frequency. And so when we are eating food or drinking whatever, or when we sit in school all day in Wi-Fi fields of radiation, when we are increasingly having our atmosphere transformed in terms of its radiation content on a fantastic scale, we are seeing that. We're seeing food as in the holographic level as something on the plate, but in its base form, it is an information field, and that distorted information field we call the rubbish food that we get, and the polluted water, etc., and the Wi-Fi fields, is interacting with the DNA, and it is changing it. What is a distorted information field going to do to another information field that's receiving it? It's going to distort it, and that's what's happening.
Let me stop you, because while you're speaking, they're Googling and putting up mainline prestigious universities admitting that our DNA is unraveling, degenerating, our sperm count's down almost 90%. They're admitting that they can charge DNA with the program sequence of another animal, and it will actually imprint that. So it's documented, and they know they're doing it. And you wrote about this 20 years ago, and now they're just now admitting it. They are purposefully reprogramming us to turn us into abominations. I mean, this is sick. I mean, if I was a foreign alien force, this is how I'd take over.
Here's Alex, that these ancient, endless stories all over the ancient world of the gods interbreeding with humans and transforming the human form. Well, if you understand how DNA works, you don't have to mutate the species and change the species by sexual procreation. I mean, how long would that take? You can do it by transmitting the information of the form you want to turn us into to the DNA on its frequency, and as it receives it, it will mutate in accordance with that information.
Sure, your DNA is a wireless receiver, and there's real Wi-Fi. That's why they can plug wires into people's brains now and make them stop having epilepsy. We are literally being programmed.
Yeah, and this is where the transhumanist agenda comes in. I mean, engineered wars, engineered financial crashes, all these things are absolutely vital to know about. They're absolutely vital to circulate and explain. But beyond that, the biggest agenda of all is the transhumanist agenda, because I've talked about the fact that this is a biological computer. They want to put technological computer software into the biological computer so that they can control it and control its perceptions and feed its perceptions on a level that we've not even seen so far. We talk about smart meters, smart TVs, smartphones, smart in front of all these new technologies. Everything with smart in front of it is designed to speak and communicate with everything else with smart in front of it. And thus, what they're creating is a sub-reality, an energetic sub-reality within a certain frequency band, the frequency band of human brainwave activity. And the idea is that they connect. If they can get technology inside of humans, the connection will be obviously technology to technology. They will connect the human mind, the human perception processes to this smart grid.
Sure, it's artificial telepathy, and it's funny you say that. We were Google last year declassified from their own corporate records their own founding meeting 16 years ago, where they had the billionaire investors. They go, why do we need other search engines? They said, it's not that. Everyone's going to feed the reality into us. We're going to have an AI that's a mass hive consciousness tied into all these devices that are integrated, and it will now be a new reality. So
that's exactly what's happening, Alex, and that's why Google is absolutely at the center of this. It's no accident whatsoever. But not only does Google dominate the internet, and the internet is fundamental to this technologically generated fake reality they're building and want to attach us to, but they've also got this Google X laboratory. They're also buying up robotic companies to create artificial
It's an AI takeover. The word is it's already artificially intelligent. We're in a science fiction movie. It's taking over. It's already making the decisions.
This is the point, but if you See, what's happened up to this point is people have been pulled out of their expanded level of awareness, their true self, into the five senses by society being totally driven and focused upon the five senses. Everything's about look at this, smell this, taste this, all of it. And the education system is about locking people into the five senses and the left side of the brain, which connects more than any other part of the brain into the five senses. And people then get locked in a tiny, tiny band of five-sense reality. But what they want to do with the transhumanist agenda is take that another massive step forward. So instead of just locking people in the five senses, so that's the only reality they perceive, so they think people like me are crazy because I'm saying it's not the only reality, they want to create a situation where they have a technologically generated collective sub-reality, like a massive global cloud, as they call it, which is connected to the human thought and perception processes and is feeding this fake reality that we think is real.
I was about to say, they're not wanting to just gauge reality, they're wanting to control reality and
completely dictate it, yes, so that we become no more than robots. Literally, we become biological, indeed, with the transhumanist agenda, biological, technological
That's what
robots.
They're saying.
David Icke, no ability to think outside of what we're being fed. That's where it's leading, and that's what we must address.
Absolutely. Well, I know you've had a lot of projects going, and you just said you can come back on anytime, 2 weeks, a month, whenever you're ready for another hour, hour and a half. Please come on and break down the whole transhumanist deal. You can send some of your slides and documents. We can do a whole David Icke presentation here. It's been so important I haven't even plugged anything we're doing. Folks can find out all the great stuff you're doing at davidicke.com, your latest book, speaking engagements, and more. David, always informative and thought-provoking. Love the look of your new website. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Alex. See you soon. Bye.
All right, take care. Now go ahead and talk to him before he goes, Nico, and let's line him up for the next interview while we got him. We're going to come back and hit a lot of the more five senses news straight ahead. We're going to come back out of the rabbit hole a little bit. We're back live for this short segment, part of the next. Dr. Steve Pieczenik has been able to briefly join us today, and then I will get into the rest of the news I haven't hit yet towards the end of this hour. I never even aired the This Week on ABC yesterday where they claimed I wouldn't show up to debate them live when they said that they weren't going to do the interview, basically, and then came to pick me up 12 minutes before it was airtime so they could claim I was a coward. Just all sorts of weaselly behavior out of government-run media. But Dr. Steve Pieczenik, of course, ran the famous Camp David Accords as the psychological expert there. He wrote the manual on psychological warfare for the State Department, helped found the Delta Force with General Boykin and others, and, of course, been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, co-wrote a bunch of books with Tom Clancy, produced Hollywood films. And he was the guy who came on in early 2002 to say the bin Laden death was a hoax, and that he'd already, basically died, that he wasn't alive. They'd roll him out later. Then Walter Cronkite came out and said it. Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, said it. And then they rolled him out, and it was all fake. Well, now Cy Hirsch came out 2 years ago and said it's a 100% lie. I have an article coming out. Well, they came after him. He shut up for a while. He talked some to our office. Now he's saying, well, it's just fake that they didn't have a firefight. Only one guy was killed. Well, that's what we were told. A double of bin Laden, and then it was a military safe house. That's why it was a half mile from the main military headquarters of the whole country. And the Navy SEALs started figuring that out, so they blew up their helicopter a few months later on a set-up mission. I've since then talked to family members of the Navy SEALs, and I've talked to some of the Navy SEAls. The videos are up on Infowars.com. Within a day of the hoax, I said it was a hoax. And then within a few months of the event, we pointed out that they basically had killed the Navy SEALs. And joining us is Dr. Pieczenik. We got 3 minutes to break. We'll come back with 10 minutes after that, sir. Appreciate your time. But what do you make of Cy Hirsch now and all this coming out at this point with the bin Laden hoax?
Well, I've known about Cy Hirsch. We come from the opposite sides of the ideological spectrum, but he's very well versed in intelligence, and he is very accurate. There was no raid. There basically was no stand. The stand down was, as we said, at Cheney, Bush, Rumsfeld, and basically this was a CIA operation. It was run by the CIA and implemented by the CIA, started by Tenet, John Brennan, and what we have is a real problem of credibility in our military, in our political leadership, and in our intelligence leadership. And what this brings out is like the My Lai massacre, the cover-up is major. It goes from Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, it goes to Bush Jr., Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Obama. And basically it puts into place Admiral McRaven, who was in charge of the Special Forces, or the SEAL team, who claimed all this nonsense about how well they performed, and then puts into play Admiral Mullen, who was also a liar. I've said it from day one they were liars. I said they were ineffectual. I said the SEAL teams were blown out of proportion. It was a publicity stunt. And now more than ever, Cy Hirsch has made it very clear. Now, I and Cy Hirsch have not agreed, and I've had a confrontation with him in an intelligence meeting. So for him to come out on our side to basically say the government's lying again and again, this is the key point for your listeners to understand. We have a government that is not legitimate. Obama has lied repeatedly. From the beginning till now, he has lied. Our military has lied. Our intelligence has lied. So we have candidates who are coming in like Hillary Clinton, who also lied. She was part of this. She was a senator.
Well, Doctor, stay there. I'm going to come back to Dr. Steve Pieczenik after this quick break to break down what does it signify, though, that CNN's top headline would be this and that Cy Hirsch is coming out with the truth now, or a limited hangout. What does that say is happening inside the power structure? Stay with us. Dr. Steve Pieczenik is our guest. Then I want to air the Face the Nation thing that I never really got to yesterday or this week, whatever the stupid Sunday propaganda show is, where they just lied and said that I didn't show up to the interview. They said, we're not doing it live. And I said, well, I'm not doing it taped. And they didn't respond back and sent a card, 12 minutes to airtime. Just the stunts they play now to try to win points. And everybody knows I go on live shows. I'm going to tear these people apart. I want to ask Dr. Pieczenik his take on Jade Helm and all the drills the government's got them doing for civil disturbance and where he thinks it's all going, what they're gearing up for. Dr. Pieczenik's talked about the states being the answer to getting control of the federal government. Well, yeah, and they're preparing and training the military to try to take on the states. People say, well, that'll never happen. Well, with the criminals we've got running things, it certainly might. And they're really worried about Texas. So we'll get Dr. Pieczenik's take on that briefly here in a moment as well. But if you go to Infowars.com, you'll see flashback, proof bin Laden death, another government lie. Infowars report 4 years before Hirsch revelations. And then we break down the day after it happened in an 8-minute video that it's a hoax. That was May 2nd, 2011. And then proof bin Laden death, another government lie. We've got interviews with Pieczenik in there. We've got interviews with the family of some of the dead SEALs, multiple families. And we've got more current breakdowns of this. But I want to explain something to people. We've broken hundreds of secret documents here and hundreds of others that are restricted. And it's very dangerous to do that in this climate. You know, if we meet with a Navy SEAL, and I talk about it on air, you better believe we did. Or if we meet with a family of a Navy SEAL who died, that's what I did a couple days after the helicopter blew up and they got rid of them, a few months after the fake killing. And the families and what the SEALs believe is that it was a body double they were there to take out. There wasn't a big firefight outside. The other helicopter just blew up. It was a half mile or less from the main military base of the whole country, their headquarters and their main academy. And so we never knew exactly what happened, but people on the ship said there was no burial at sea, so they court-martialed over 100 people. And it's just been one big cover-up. They lied about the Situation Room photo. Dr. Pieczenik, you've got a lot of amazing sources. I know you've been visited by the CIA and MI6 and threatened. I've been threatened. And then they had the Stratford leak that they were tasked with trying to, you know, make us look bad. I mean, I didn't ask to be at the level of this whole game. All I want's my country back. But now I'm being attacked by up to 300 to 500 newspapers a day saying lies. I mean, on a Richter scale, previous attacks were a 2 or 3. This is a 10. What is going on? Why do you think they're targeting us? Is it getting ready to destroy me or building me up to be politically discredited with straw men? And then I want to go back into bin Laden. But I want to be a little selfish today and ask you, from your perspective and your sources, what is going on? Because they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off about this show. And quite frankly, I don't like being that prominent. I mean, this is a multi-magnitudes more effect. But I think I know my own answer, and I want your take on this. Congress is listening. The military is listening. Not that I'm special, but I have all these amazing guests on, people like you, and this show is a lot closer to reality than almost anything else out there. So this has become like the forbidden fruit channel or something, where it's just gotten really hot, and it shows the insanity of the official narrative. And so they're trying to discredit me right now with Pentagon-directed bull and CIA-directed bull. Where is this going?
Well, Alex, number one, let me assure you that nobody wants to take you out. The reason for that is very simple. They do not want to make you a martyr. That does not serve anybody's purpose. Number two, the reason you're exceedingly important, even to the intelligence community, to me, is remember, you were the only man who stood up 13 years ago when we had the 9/11 and said, and allowed me to say, this was a false flag and a stand down.
It was 14, Steve, 14.
14 years ago. So you have to remember, a prophet in his own country is never appreciated. You will never be appreciated in this country because you tell the truth. And no one in the Republic who runs the Republic can tolerate it. However, you have amassed a huge audience in the millions, which to many in the senior leadership is very threatening. And the reason is very simple. In the beginning, they could co-opt you as crazy or me as crazy and call us a very simple term, conspiracy. However, fortunately, your audience and the American audience is too smart, far too smart, to buy any of the narratives that were sold by Clinton, the Bushes, or by the CIA or the military. And eventually what happened in the age of the Internet, you were able to take that narrative without deviating an ounce, without backing off, but having sponsors and having someone like me say, keep going, Alex, you're brave, don't worry about it. They will not attack you. I've been
attacked with propaganda and other things by different camps. I know it's not one monolithic system. It's just to be 41 years old and to have no exaggeration. One day last week, 500 news articles and lying about me. What nerve have we hit? Is it they think we're weak, so they're going in, or they think we're strong? Because, I mean, I can handle a lot of pressure, Doc, but this is starting to get like the Twilight Zone.
Well, the point is that is a sense of recognition and admiration. Remember, you're being lauded by the fact that they feel you're a threat to them by continuously cutting into their vulnerable point. It's a badge of honor, and the audience understands that people all over the world listen to you, and this republic can no longer stand the way it is. It's falling apart.
Well, I just want the establishment to understand this, and I say this selfishly for myself and my own family. People get this stuff now. I'm not the only one talking about this. There's thousands of other prominent people that get the paradigm now. So doing something to me is not going to do anything. All I'm, except turn me into a martyr. But the thing is, I don't hate the government. I don't even hate these special interests. These people are almost blind, Dr. Pieczenik, in my view, in that they don't look at what their actions are going to do 10, 15 steps down the road. They're destroying the empire itself. They're destroying the country. They are going after the press. They're going after our industry. They're just doing crazy stuff, and I just don't see it. I don't see this elite being able to continue on. That's all I'm saying. And all I want is prosperity and stability, Doctor.
Let me pull back a little bit and explain something to you. We are not a monolithic entity. I've said that before. But your ability to penetrate through and hit at the nerve spot allows different elements of the government, I won't identify which intelligence communities or which elements, to allow them to push back. I'll give you an example. Why was this story by Seymour Hersh released now, more than ever? Nobody's asking that question except you. And the answer is, my suspicion is, it's only my suspicion, I'm not going to conspiracy, is that it's elements within our own government who have very close relationships with Seymour Hersh and know him exceedingly well because Seymour has been in meetings with me, with the intelligence community, and he knows he gets information from it. And I won't identify which units. It's a way of paying back Obama, Jeb Bush, and Hillary Clinton to get them out of the race. It's the way the industry, the intelligence system, and the military system works indirectly in order to punish those political leaders and dynasties which think that they can run the republic, namely the Clintons, who were involved in 9/11, let me finish, and the Bushes, Neil, Marvin, Jeb, and the old man, including Bush Jr., because they have destroyed the republic. Now it's time for the military and intelligence units that are loyal to the republic to punish this administration for what they did in Benghazi, for having demoted Petraeus, for having demoted 12 of our Navy commissioned Navy men, for having demoted AFRICOM generals, and this is their way to tell Obama you're no longer in charge. And by the way, Hillary, you will not get elected, nor will you, Jeb Bush. And that's my point of view, which I think is well grounded in terms of knowing Seymour Hersh, knowing when he covers up, and knowing where he gets the intelligence. So what I'm saying to you and the public is we have our own ways in the republic to punish those who've punished the people. And you have to have faith that you, Alex, and the audience have had an impact on many elements of our society which you don't know about. And some of them I don't know about, but there are many who I work with and can criticize because this country allows you to criticize as long as you serve it.
That was my next point. That's my next point. Then I want your take on this, then we'll go back to the bin Laden situation. Sure. We'll have you back for a full hour soon if you can do it. StevePieczenik.com, best-selling author, joins us right now, former spy chief, basically, with the State Department. If you pull back from all this, I totally agree with you. I know there's really good camps of people in the Army, in the Navy, in the Marines, across the board. They hate what's happening. I know 2 years ago, General Dempsey, on that Saturday night, went to the White House and said the military's not going to back an attack to topple Assad, to put al-Qaeda in charge. We're not doing it. So there is, just like Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex, he meant the special interest manipulating it. People always ask and say, well, tyranny couldn't come, our military wouldn't put up with it. Well, that's actually true. Our military has been saying no over and over again. That's why these bureaucrats are so angry with it, is that it's not perfect, but compared to them, it's you know, a whole different world. And you're right. I know for a fact when the FBI or the Justice Department subgroups or state police or federal marshals give us documents that turn out to be accurate every time, that burns the police state, it's because they don't like it. And there is a war going on from every different angle between different stratas, and it is good versus evil. And I mean, I agree with you. All this stuff coming out on Hillary and how she lied about getting shot at in Serbia is the inside system saying no to these dynasties and trying to reform things. So in this fight, I understand we're used as a conduit, because I'm the only person, at least in the past, crazy enough to stick my neck out and do this stuff, to go forward in the future. So what does that signify, and how is the fight from your sources going internally for the future of the Republic?
Well, I'm more optimistic about the future Republic. Number one, without caressing you or lauding you, you and I know we've gone back a long ways when you were very young and very courageous, and you were able to state exactly what I said, and we made the prediction that 14 years from now, after 9/11, some president is going to claim he killed Osama bin Laden, which we knew was nonsense. Secondly, you have to remember, when I walk around and see different people, some people may recognize me, but you know the first thing they ask me about? It's not Tom Clancy, my partner. It's about Alex Jones. And I said, well, how did you know who I am? He said, well, I heard you on Alex Jones. You are everywhere. I go to Europe. You're everywhere. In the Middle East, you're everywhere. So your voice is not just the voice of Alex Jones. It's the voice of truth and a prophet that within his own country has made an impact. Now, let me tell you, the intelligence community is a very rich and wonderful community. It's filled with individuals who feel very strongly about our country, but they can't come out in public and say what they want to, and especially in the military. I can't tell you how important General Martin Dempsey has been to our country in terms of restraining the wars, in terms of focusing, in terms of running our military in a time of uncertainty.
Next question, who's this new guy?
I don't really know him. I can't say anything. He's a commandant of the Marine Corps. I'm a great admirer of the Marine Corps. It's improved over the years. They've become very effective in what we call the human topography. In other words, they've learned about psychology and anthropology, but I really can't comment about any of that. I think it's important that we rotate through the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But there are people who have not worked with us, and that is what you're seeing now. I think Benghazi and I think what happened to Petraeus had a major, major impact on military and intelligence community, and especially a White House that was not very effective or very developed as in the Obama administration. They specifically do not want Jeb Bush anymore. They're tired of Bush. Bush is a liar. He worked with his brother. They're tired of Hillary Clinton. It's more than just her lies. It's the corruption that she's had with Russia, uranium, and with Bill Clinton constantly lying, constantly degrading the republic. And our military and intelligence units will not tolerate
Sure. Well, we know the Clintons have been blackmailing with all the files they've got. Correct. But you can see that people in the system are sick of them.
Correct. But, Alex, you cannot I know it's hard for you, and I understand it very well. That's why I often volunteer to kind of give you and say to the audience, look, take a break, but you have to keep going on. This race is not a short-distance race, and you've done a formidable job over 14 years, but there's going to be more years to come, because whatever we're going to elect, and hopefully it will be the Scott Walkers, the Rand Pauls, the people from the Midwest, the young Christians who come out of something that doesn't have any kind of tainted background and can begin to understand what our country needs. And it needs leadership. It needs to consolidate. It needs to close down our government units. But you're the voice, and that voice is going to attract a lot of dissident behavior, and that's okay.
Well, I'll tell you what it comes down to. I mean, take this military drill. It's just more conditioning, more of an attempt, because I think the country's going to collapse to get ready for that. We never said Jade Helm would be the takeover, but everybody from the governor of Texas to Senator Cruz to Senator Paul to Congressman Louis Gohmert to Chuck Norris, came out and said, I love our military, but I don't trust who's running it. Well, you know Chuck Norris has got incredible military sources. The Special Forces love him. He hangs out with them all over the world. And I'm not going to say what I've been told and things. We're going to have some news tomorrow on that subject. But it's not just me. I'm just one little iceberg sticking up. Under the surface, what you just said, the military is so awake and knows what's going on. That's why the political elite, these globalists, better get their act together, because what they've got planned for this country, taking it over, setting up a police state, the dog's not going to hunt, Doc.
Well, let me tell you one thing. Number one, the police state can no longer exist, and it's not viable, and I'll tell you why. I live in the South. It is very hard for any policeman on a national level to be able to infiltrate any particular area of the South, because it's very fragmented and it has its loyalty to the local community. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for your listeners to work at the local level with the local police, with the local mayors, the local commissioners. They are far more powerful than the President of the United States, than the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We have military officers who work at the local level. I've got a military officer who works in my area and at the same time is a commissioner. He's not taking over the government. He's learning how to run a civilian government while at the same time being able to service his country, what we call the Patriot. That's what happened in 1776, and that's what I'm beginning to see all over the country. What we need are leaders who have served in our country, who understand where we have to go.
You know, you just said it. Stay there. Do the final segment with us, because that's it. I should just leave Jade Helm alone and let them practice taking over local government, because most of the military is already on our side. Correct. And so as they put them in local government, it just means our people are already everywhere. That's what the Barack Obamas don't get, is they're literally setting up their own downfall. We'll be back. Stay with us. When I talk about the prominence of this broadcast, I'm not here bragging. The reason I spend a little bit of time on that is that it gets creepy to have the media misrepresenting what you say, what you stand for, what you do, trying to discredit you because they're so scared of what you're talking about. And, I mean, they should be scared. We were the first to have Navy SEAL families on who lost their sons saying that bin Laden raid was fake. Because it was. And I got death threats over that. Very specific ones. And I'm not really scared. It's just at the same time, I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm trying to help everybody. I mean, this country's going over the edge here. Somebody's got to restrain the out-of-control bureaucrats and corporate interests that sit overseas half the time and aren't really looking at what they're doing and don't understand how they're eroding America's real power. That's my view on it. And Dr. Pieczenik finishing up on the whole climate in this country. Jade Helm, 10-state operation. Clearly, it's mastering the human domain. It's practicing how to take over locally for civil unrest and this new enemy, the Tea Party or whatever. But the good news is that's only woken the military up. But I think the system should look at all these small towns, people coming out of the woodwork saying no in a traditionally pro-military state like Texas. It's not anti-military. We understand the mission is an overall corrupt mission. I'm not against people who are vets running for office. I think that's great. But I'm talking about the fact that not just the military rejecting where Obama wants them to go, but the people understand that the military is being used for unconstitutional duties and that the feds are very scared of the states' rights movement. Dr. Pieczenik, your take on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. What I begin to see more and more is that more young people are joining the National Guard and are getting involved in the local communities at a very young age, at the 20s, 30s. I even met a young woman who is 23 years old in the state legislature here in Florida, and it's very impressive. So you have grassroots that are coming out from very different groups, whether it's the Christian Missionaries of America, a religious group or political group, or the Tea Party, and that is the essence of our democracy. So I'm not as worried about the police state coming down and our soldiers shooting at Americans. They're not going to do that.
I don't think that's going to happen either. The point is the political class is trying to sell that mission.
Well, the problem is, first of all, remember, you have aggrandized your audience into the millions. You look at Anderson Cooper, an ex-CIA operative who works, on the weekend. He has less than 1 million people. You look at MSNBC, they're dead. You look at Fox, it's basically nothing more than Roger Ailes allowing himself to make more money. And I know Roger. I like him. But nobody takes it seriously. So the reality is it's you and what the people find on the Internet and are able to cross hatch.
Well, take Drudge. I mean, why does the Pentagon and Congress obsess over Drudge all day? I mean, it really shows that the system's a paper tiger.
Well, yeah, that's true. But on the other hand, you have General Dempsey, whose real concerns is how many guys can I send into Djibouti? How many guys can I send into Iraq? How many special forces can I send into, anywhere near Iraq, into Jordan to protect them? I mean, we have serious problems that are being addressed in a serious way, where most of the time they're being asked about sexual harassment in the military by senators.
That's another question. Do 5 more minutes. 60-second break, StevePieczenik.com. Steve Pieczenik's our guest. I want to ask you, when we come back in Overdrive, some stations don't carry it, Infowars.com/show. What is the elite doing harassing the military structure at every level? If I was a foreign enemy, this is how I would erode it, with all the political correctness training, all of it. And what's going on with ISIS from the information you have? Final segment, straight ahead, Infowars.com. All right, folks, we're into Overdrive. We're going to go ahead and kill the music. I want to have the maximum amount of time to finish up with Pieczenik. You understand, selfishly, I'm going to ask some of my own questions here, but you heard the questions I asked as we were going to break. Dr. Pieczenik, go ahead.
the basic bottom line is that the congressmen and senators, particularly the senator from New York, their intent, whether it's wittingly or unwittingly, is to degrade our capability in the military. Civilians feel very threatened by the strength of our military. They always have, but our military is much stronger, a lot smarter than these congressmen and senators. Many of our generals have PhDs, masters. I mean, Keith Alexander had 4 masters. General Petraeus had a PhD. So these senators are very low in terms of the intellectual gravitas, where you have commanders who are literally in action. And I've warned our commanders that if they continue to appear before Congress and Senate and go over this nonsensical issue of sexual harassment, where now our own soldiers have to wear high-heel shoes in order to feel what it feels like to be a woman, that's degrading. But it's really...
By the way, if you're a new listener, they made them wear ruby red slippers.
Correct.
I mean, this is just mental illness.
Well, it's not only mental illness. There should be defiance within the rank, and just throw out the generals or female generals or male generals who insist on it. This is inappropriate. It's a command and control issue. It's not acceptable. The second thing is, where the CIA, a civilian unit, has created troubles, like in ISIS, like Iraq, with Bush Jr. and Cheney, where they were not able to complete their own task, where it was an inappropriate task to attack Iraq. Iraq was created, ISIS was created from the generals who escaped, thanks to Jerry Bremer, who was an inept individual, part of Opus Dei, a man who was never qualified for this, and demilitarized the Iraqi army. Now they have the unit of the Iraqi army, which attracted Sunnis, and then in turn our military has to go in and clean out what the CIA made a mistake. That is a history that has gone on for 30 years. I've worked with both the CIA and our military intelligence. For the most part, our CIA has left a legacy of ashes, as Eisenhower's repeated, and the military's had to clean it up, be it Vietnam, be it ISIS, be it Iraq, Yemen, Somalia. And so now we have an internal fight that goes between the civilians and the military. It will go on for quite a while, but we can no longer have...
And the civilians are going to put the military in roles to make them the bad guys, just like they're going to put cops in the roles to make them the bad guys. We've got to be sophisticated enough to see that it's these different agencies that want to discredit what they see as the old, original American institutions, the military and local governments.
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, the prosecutor, the African-American woman, Prosecutor Mosby at Baltimore, who said that we're going to find justice. I mean, she was absurd, because I happen to know the difference between a switchblade and a regular knife, and I happen to have had properties in Baltimore 30 years ago, and I had to give them up because Baltimore was the same problem 30 years ago that it has now. So it has not improved. It's not a matter of justice. It's a matter of competency.
She also is going on stage with Prince, promising to persecute the police. And I'm not defending the police state, but I mean, you don't have prosecutors like a rock star because she's prosecuting someone. That's crazy.
Correct. And Prince is totally inappropriate. It's the issue of African American versus white is not appropriate. Obama should have cut this off quickly. I think we have an attorney general who's quite good, Lynch, who will not get into this problem, and we can solve it. I think we have an FBI director, Comey, who defied Bush Jr. before, and I think that's going well. And we have a general who's defied the president's orders. So we have people who are really Americans who defy what the orders are, but do it quietly, and then retaliate through guys like Seymour Hersh. And that's definitely a retaliation against the Clintons.
In closing, we only got 45 seconds. Why are they making such a big deal out of Jade Helm? I mean, we just mentioned it as an aside, and they're like chickens with their heads cut off. What's going on?
I have no idea. They just pick a particular individual for Jade Helm. But the truth is, the far greater story is the story of our economy as it moves forward, and China and Europe and Russia are going down. So that's
sure. I talked to the governor, chief of staff today, and he said, look, we're just ignoring Jade Helm and trying to go ahead with the economy.
You just go ahead with the economy, and that's what your people have to understand, and keep on doing the great work.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Pieczenik, for your perspective. StevePieczenik.com, Alex Jones. Nightly news tonight, 7 o'clock Central. It's going to be big. 7 o'clock tonight. Tell your friends and family, tune in. Become PrisonPlanet.tv members. Thank you all for your support. All right, that's it for this live transmission.